You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, dedicated to the 40-plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. Hey, welcome back to the 40 Fit Radio, and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. I'm here with Coach Trent.
Yo.
And this is Coach D. And we also have, again, Robert Santana, the Robert Santana.
The returning champion.
Yeah, the returning champion of what?
Of 40 Fit Radio.
Oh, a 40.
Do I get a belt?
You won
How
40
did he
Fit
win?
Radio.
He hasn't done anything to win anything. We haven't had a competition.
That's the
I
thing.
outlived the guy.
He doesn't need
He
to
does.
compete to win.
I was stronger than you briefly. It was just
It was a
sad.
very small, brief moment. But we have another
I still
guy
remember that.
who's stronger in the house who we'll talk to in a
That's
few
right,
minutes.
yeah.
So let's not just talk about strength too much and get a little braggadocious here.
Wait,
That's
Trent,
right,
did
yeah.
you
Keep
pass
it on the
him
down
squat?
low. And so, no, he didn't pass me up on the squat,
Not
but
yet.
his press is killer.
Yeah.
His press
Yeah,
is killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll always get me on the press. You know, I'm too
He's
old.
yeah.
When you hit,
It's those old crunchy triceps that just
what are you talking about? My triceps are fine. The problem is
stringy
when you hit 40, upper body strength really begins to struggle. Unless you're a particular guy that we're going to talk to later in another episode, and
Maybe
he
in this
is a
one.
total outlier. He doesn't represent normal genetics, the normal human population. I call him the mini Hulk, and we're going to talk to him in a few minutes. But he's over here smiling. But so let's talk about this real quickly.
All right.
We're going to talk about eating out today because that's something that we've been wanting to talk about because that's something that a lot of clients, a lot of our trainees, just a lot of people in general, and especially as you have more disposable income, you have a tendency to eat out more. You have a tendency to eat out of fast food restaurants. And I mean, there's a lot, there is some good food or nutrition at some fast food places, or also nicer restaurants, business meetings, social gatherings, what have you. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to let you start doing that, Mr.
right.
Santana.
Well, you kind of inspired me because I'm going to probably put this in writing at some point, and I want to really look into the history of dining out and the cultural influence behind that because there's a big social aspect to it. So way back when, I think like 10 years ago, I went on a diet, and I was talking to a friend and fellow dietitian, and I was told when we went out to eat, don't be weird, and I knew what was meant,
Yeah,
So-
definitely.
I'm like, well, you got a point, because we all eat out typically on the weekends or the days we're not working. That could vary from person to person. And you got to know what to do in those situations if you're on a diet or if you're maintaining your weight or if you're just trying to prevent weight gain. There's different strategies that you kind of put into it. So one of the things that I always didn't like when I was a dietetic student was a lot of the instructors would say, well, we don't like the word diet. Don't use the word diet. You're not on a diet. This is a lifestyle. And, that's 100% correct. This is a lifestyle and there's foundational habits that need to be there in order for you to, have long-term weight maintenance, long-term healthy eating behaviors, etc. But there's certain points, like if you're in a situation where you're overweight or obese, that's what we're going to talk about, and you need to lose body weight or body fat. The main thing that drives that, as I've said in previous episodes and in other places all over the interwebs, you have to maintain a calorie deficit. You have to eat fewer calories than you're burning. It's simple math. There's lots of spin out there on, it's not just calories in, calories out. And we've covered this. So,
Sure.
The macronutrient breakdown will determine where that weight comes from, whether you're losing fat or muscle, or whether you're gaining fat or muscle. But ultimately, if you're not in a negative energy balance, you're not going to lose weight. So one of the common issues that I run into with clients is they're part-time dieters. And by that, I mean that, they are real good, spot on when they're preparing their food at home. They make all their food, they go to work, they maintain that calorie deficit Monday through Friday, then Saturday, friend invites them out. Sunday, grandma comes over,
Right.
And then I get the check-in on Tuesday because they're trying to, not check in the next day on Monday. And they're like, oh, I did so great all last week. I was spot on the plan, except Saturday, I drank 5 glasses of wine, ate a bunch of chips at the Mexican restaurant. and had some cheesecake afterwards. And then I went home and ate some ice cream. And
Sure.
And then grandma made cookies.
And I had to eat those.
Right.
And they were just so
can't
good.
not eat those. Yeah. Right.
But otherwise, okay, why am I not losing weight? I mean, this happens. These are real live emails that, if I didn't respect people's confidentiality, I'd show it to you right now. But
Right.
This actually does happen. So what do you do? So the first thing that I try to teach people is it really comes down to portion control, because you don't want to go in there and try to track macros because you don't know what's in there. I mean, there's different food portion guides that can help you estimate carbohydrates and protein just by looking at it. But I've said this in other podcasts that fat is the undercover macro. Like, you can't visibly measure that, like, unless you're eating peanut butter maybe, or maybe cheese or oil, if you're measuring it out. But most of the time when you go dine at a restaurant, the food's already prepared and it's been prepared in some sort of fat.
Well, we were talking earlier, and that's a great example, is that you could look, you can prepare a chicken breast at home, and then you can have that exact same portion size chicken breast in a restaurant. And they can be two totally different foods in regards to their nutritional value or their caloric load,
right,
based on how they cook that chicken breast. Or has it been injected with fat and sugars to make it taste more palatable in a commercial setting, to something maybe that you had bought at the grocery store or at a local market that's farm raised, or that's more organic. So it's hard to you can't say they're both chicken. We know that. And they're both proteins, and they both should be about 28 grams of protein plus or minus,
about 20 to 30 depending.
Yeah, based on the size.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we really don't know, how much fat is. It's probably fat and sugar combined.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and again, I'm going to do a bunch of research on this. I'm going to write a cool article on this.
Yeah,
Give me ideas
it's
here.
a cool subject.
Yeah, because why is that? I mean, I have my general speculations that we'll talk about here, but I really want to dig into the origins of, the food processing in the United States, because I think that'd be cool to write about.
Well, I can tell you something that's very, very interesting about the beef industry, because I've studied the beef industry, being a cattle rancher and raising cattle. And that is, for years, most beef prior to about the 1920s, 1930s, most beef was farm raised. Mm-hmm. And it was not prepared in any particular manner in regards to feedlotting, into cube feeding, feedlots and grain mills, and that type of process. I hate to use the word processed beef, but that type of lot raised beef was not even in existence yet. But after the 1920s and the Great Depression, the 1930s into the 1940s, beef in hotels became more and more popular. And the type of beef that was being served to the very well-to-do or the rich had a much higher fat content, because the population that was eating beef liked it to be more and more tender, more and more thick in its density or size, and also be more palatable. Just taste better, right? And so beef became more and more selected towards both genetically how beef, how cows were being raised, or steers, whatever you want to call it, how cattle were being raised. It became more and more modified to be better for the wealthy, the well-to-do. You could still buy farm-raised beef, but it became more and more processed, for lack of better terms. As things continued to occur with the beef industry, foods became more and more processed, more and more selected to be available to the populace, large populations.
Right.
And that same thing continued to carry forward,
right,
in regards to the style of food that we were eating.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's very interesting, when you look at it, because prior to that, beef tasted very different in this country.
How much has corn impacted that? Because I've heard it argued that the amount of corn fed beef,
sure,
that part of the reason that corn is so popular, besides the fact it's a very cheap food source,
and we have more of corn than we do anything else,
right? Is it kind of provides perhaps a somewhat homogeneous but a nice tasting beef. It's like a well marbled, sweet tasting steak.
You know,
for
I
lack
think
of a
that
better term.
varies from lot to lot, from feedlot to feedlot industry and different corporations in regards to what they're feeding them. But very few lots today feed nothing but corn as the primary food source. It's usually an amalgamated grain. It's a multi-grain product. So it could have corn in it, sorghum in it. It could have wheat in it. It could have other products, and it'll have all the trace minerals in it and everything. So most larger feedlots will mill their own grain source for their cows. And then they also have, and I cannot think of the name of it, silage. And they also have silage, which has been stored and fermented, and they also feed silage throughout the month. So, but it's really interesting. I think that grain-fed beef in general produce more marbling, higher the carbohydrates. It produces more marbling, more tender select beef, and some of that's genetics too, the quality of the beef that they're raising. But you'll find that how many of y'all have eaten true organic beef? You know, farm raised organic beef that's never been fed grain. It does taste significantly
Quite
different.
Yeah.
And you have to develop a
gamier flavor, for lack of a better term.
Well, and the texture's a little bit harder. And I was in Costa Rica several years ago, and with a group of guys, we were doing a guys trip, and they asked you in the restaurants, do you want Western raised beef or Costa Rican beef? And we were like, well, what's the difference? And they're like, well, Costa Rican beef is mostly Brahma. Brahma cattle is what they raise there mostly. And they said, you know, it's going to taste a little bit tougher. Even our what we would call our select beef or our prime beef is going to be tougher. And it's going to have a little bit more of a twang to it. The texture is going to be a little harder and twangier.
Right.
There's
something kind of homogenous about U.S. beef. So one thing that you said that about you're interested in looking into the kind of the culture of eating out in the Western world. One thing that brought to mind was it was one of Michael Pollan's books. It was real famous years back. In Defense of Food, maybe. Okay. I can't remember which one it was, but he made an argument at the beginning of that book that I remember that one of the things that's unique about American food and American diets is that we have, obviously, we're a nation of immigrants. We have this melting pot of culture.
Yep.
And we also have this melting pot of food culture. And one of the interesting things is, as the American diet has become its own thing, we've got all of these foods from different cultures, but we've tended to select the densest, the richest foods from every culture without eating the totality of any one culture, right? So if we have Mediterranean food,
we eat all
we've
the
got
good
the
stuff.
the falafel, the shawarma, we've got the curries, but we're not eating all the vegetables that same culture would eat.
Where do biscuits fit into that? Let me think. Biscuits and gravy and chicken fried steak and
soul food. That's food for the soul,
that's
not
comfort,
just for the
comfort
body.
food.
Yes, that's right.
Comfort foods.
But that's interesting. So I guess that's one of the issues at play here, right? So when we go to a restaurant, we're not, even if it's an ethnic restaurant, quote unquote, it's not necessarily representative of that culture's diet.
Not necessarily, no. And I've heard people say this about Mexican food, about Indian food in America versus at the parent country.
Sure.
But the most recent, first of all, the first rule of nutrition is fat tastes good, right?
Yeah.
So we all know this.
So good.
Yeah.
And some of us that know this don't know why we know this, but we know this because now, everybody's demonizing carbs, but I'll come back to that. So I recently had a client. He's a soldier, and he's stationed out in Germany, and he's lived there for 5 years. And he just came back to America the first time in 5 years. And all of a sudden, his check-ins, he's like, you had to swap this many grams of fat for this many grams of carbs for this many fat. And it kept happening. And I'm like, this is interesting because I picked up on it right away. I'm like, you're in the States, and you're suddenly eating more fat. And then he's like, the starches here in America are all high in fat. He's like, it's hard to control the fat with the starch sources. Sure. He's like, I go to Germany, I get rice and potatoes, and I know I'm going to be good. But here, everything's fried or it has butter on it, or some sort of oil. Even like vegetables, right? Serving of vegetables, which is about a cup raw, is supposed to have like 20 calories. But you go get that at, Texas Roadhouse, and they cook it in butter. You're going to get like
4 tablespoons of butter.
Yeah, exactly. Could be 200-300. Yeah.
And you've said in past episodes that where people, not always, but where people can make an error is in their fat content.
Yeah.
If they're going to go, the easiest macronutrient to go over on in regards to your portion size or percentage of your total diet is fat.
Yep.
Because there's so much fat in our foods, and I mean, obviously, a lot of foods have high sugar in them too, but But
So let's dig into that a little bit. Why does fat taste good?
Well, think about it. So, from a survival standpoint, what do we do with fat? I've talked about this in other episodes. Fat preferably gets stored as body fat. Why do we store body fat? In case we're in a famine, that's our energy depot, right? It's also more dense in calories. So there's 9 calories per gram. So, from a survival standpoint, we're hardwired to eat a lot of fat.
Yeah.
Because we're going to store a lot of fat, and then if we're in a starvation period for several months, we're less likely to die, right? And what's interesting is if you start mixing it with carbs, it tastes even better. So if you start alternating between salty and sweet,
it's awesome.
it can override.
Totally
Oh,
awesome.
yeah, right.
It could override your satiety signals,
Okay, yeah.
so that you could keep going.
Oh yeah, like ice cream and something salty. What's a good example of that?
Well, even, you think about like your typical, I mean, it doesn't even matter what type of cuisine it is, but most restaurant meals you've got your appetizer, which might have, it might be all three, carb, fat, protein. And then you've got your bread that comes out, which is sweet to me. And then you've got the savory main course, and then the dessert, and then you can just keep going, even though by the time...
Salted caramel, how about that too? I mean,
right?
There you go.
There you go, yeah.
It's a perfect example.
So good.
It's yummy.
Yeah. Typically, when I eat a meal out, it's typically going to be higher in fat, higher in salt. And when I'm done, I want ice cream.
Right.
And I eat typically eat the diet ice cream. I get a Halo Top or something.
Sure, yeah.
And once in a while, if I go get sushi with my girlfriend, and the place next door serves this awesome soft serve stuff that she makes me eat. She's sitting over here laughing. Yeah. She's like, I want an ice cream cone. I'm like, okay. Then I eat it, and then I'm like,
and she weighs like 3 pounds, I think, probably.
She's
like 3.5 pounds, maybe 4.
Yeah.
Because
she squats now,
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, right after I eat something salty like, sushi, then I want to go eat either ice cream or I'll walk over when I'm with my best friend. It's funny, he's the same way. We're all kind of wired like this. So with her, it's the soft serve place next door. When I go to the same exact restaurant with my best friend, we walk 3 blocks down to the gelato spot.
Yeah. Right.
So it's like, eat something salty, you're starting to get full, but then you just want that sweetness right after.
Sounds like she's a better influence on you, maybe. She's getting the
ice cream.
Halo ice cream stuff.
No, that's me. These people corrupt me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is that we've got in the natural world, if we were hunting and gathering for our food, that we wouldn't really find this combination of food. So this is overriding our natural evolved sense of satiety signals for satiety.
Yeah, it kind of exaggerates that,
Sure.
So
okay.
Think of something like Oreos, right? High fat, high carb.
Sure.
Right? So it's high in sugar and it's high in fat. But the average person's just going to think about how sweet it is and say, oh, those are just carbs. They don't think about this, right?
Yeah, you think about the sugar.
Yeah,
right.
Same thing
if
with
it's creamy, it's got fat in it.
Yeah, but people notice the sugar more than the richness. They know they like the richness, but that's not the first thing that comes to mind. Like you eat a donut, you taste the sugar, not necessarily that rich texture, unless you're not used to eating it. Like if I had a donut now, I'd be like, oh man, I can taste that butter,
Sure. Right.
But or whatever they use. But the whole point is that something like Oreos, you notice you can keep eating them. Mm-hmm. And you keep going and going and going. And
you got to get the whole sleeve.
Yeah.
That's the
exactly.
Right. And milk.
And the milk. Yeah. And the first bite is no different than the 100th bite or the 200th bite. It's never enough with these types of foods. And metabolically, what happens is you end up burning off those carbs and storing the fat, which we've talked about, I think, in the first one we did.
Right.
So now let's kind of take it back home. So we're hardwired to want fat. And we like sugar a lot, too. These are intense flavors. So the average American, if you ask them to write down what they eat, they're going to tell you chicken, rice, broccoli, and their written diary. So what I do when I coach a new client is they have to take a picture of all their food. And I'm not seeing broccoli and rice and chicken every day. I'm typically seeing cookies and ice cream and, a big basket of chips with guacamole at the Mexican restaurant, followed by very shiny vegetables layered on beef and tortillas, and a margarita.
Yeah.
These are the common things that I see in these visual food logs. So that's what I do. I have them take pictures so I can actually get a visual representation of what they're doing. And from there, then we got to talk about, okay, there's a few different ways you can approach the eating out situation. Number one, you just don't do it, which doesn't work for many people. People that compete.
Especially may have a job where they have to go eat at business meetings or.
Exactly.
gatherings, social functions.
Although, and I can certainly understand that somebody like a salesman that's traveling all the time for business, right? That's got to be tough. But how many people just kind of compulsively eat out just because?
Out of convenience, yeah.
Right, yeah, just convenience. But, how much more time would it really take to go whip up a 5-minute bowl of whatever, rice and beef?
I'll be honest, though. At the end of the day, if we finish our gym, if we finish the gym and it's 8 o'clock in the evening, and my wife and I have left the gym because she trains in our that latest class, and we're on our way home, every now and then I'll say, "Hey, do you just want to go grab a bite to eat somewhere?"
Sure.
It is less work. It's going to take about the same amount of time, maybe a little bit more time because we're traveling to some place and then heading back to La Casa. But at the same time, it is less work and it's more convenient.
Yeah.
We have our go-tos of a couple of restaurants that we know we're going to eat healthy at. One of them I'll have grilled salmon, broccoli, and a salad, and we'll pick it up to go and just take it home and eat that. But I'll let them know, hey, don't put this on the salmon, don't put this on the broccoli.
Yep.
And then I'll just get a dry salad, and then we'll use vinegar and oil at home, or I'll use a balsamic vinaigrette or something like that.
Right.
But everything's planned.
Yeah.
And I find that planning is the key there.
That's exactly right.
I mean, you got to know before you go.
Yeah.
You got to know kind of what you're going to do before you hit that place.
Yeah. So that's the next option. You plan it and you kind of go to a place that has some safe options there, or you try to navigate the menu. So, for instance, when I'm here in Wichita Falls, we go to Texas Roadhouse most of the time. And that place has a reputation for being very high fat. They bring those rolls out,
Yeah.
Oh,
God, these are amazing.
So damn good.
Amazing.
I will prepare myself for one, and then I have to push it aside. And I typically don't put butter on it. I might dip it in the butter and get a little bit of it on there to get the texture. I'm more of a texture person.
Okay.
So that also determines, how you make your food choices. So I am totally cool with soft, fluffy foods, even if they're not necessarily high in fat and sugar. I don't need an intense flavor in my meal. I need texture.
Sure,
Some people need flavor more than texture. That's what I've kind of noticed.
Okay.
And so when I go there, for instance, so that's like an example of, a place that's kind of hard to navigate. I'll typically get a 6-ounce filet, and I'll order a salad, dry salad, so dressing on the side. I might dip the fork in it to get some of the flavor on it. And I'll ask them to steam the vegetables, and they'll typically do that there. So that's one way to do it. When I'm home, I typically eat sushi a lot, so that's pretty easy for me. I don't get maki. So maki are like the rolls. They're typical sushi rolls, California roll, etc. I don't order those because they're typically mayonnaise and imitation crab. So, I mean, it's not real sushi.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
Not even close.
Probably making somebody mad out there. But I get the nigiri, so it's just raw fish on top of rice. And then I'll get sashimi, which is just plain raw fish with some fresh wasabi to give it some flavor and some pickled ginger. And I'll typically stick with that, and then I'll get a poke bowl, but I'll have the sauce on the side because I go to one specific restaurant. I only order poke bowls there because the way they make them is really good.
Yeah.
So they kind of mix it with like soy sauce, the ahi tuna, cucumbers, and avocados, and they get the rice on the side, you get the sauce on the side. So it's not that bad. It's like 300 calories without the rice. So I'll do that. Now, if I go somewhere that's like, okay, I got to go to this meeting, and it's fine dining, and there's going to be alcohol, I typically recommend people follow the 50% rule. Assume that you're getting double what you need and leave yourself room for it. So if I'm getting something like pasta, for instance, that's classic. If you get pasta at a restaurant, that's going to be high fat, high carb.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to get just in the noodles alone 1,000 calories or 1,200 calories. So I'll typically have like a third or a fourth of that, and then I'll order like a meat, like a grilled chicken. A lot of those places will have that, at least in their salads. So I'll get a grilled chicken salad. I'll get the meat there. I'll eat the noodles, have half a piece of bread because I know that bread stick alone is probably, however many hundreds of calories. And I'll drink water, and then maybe I'll have like 25% of the dessert, just to get that. Because I know I don't need that much sweetness after a meal to get satisfied if I could just push myself away from it.
Right.
That last part
just
being
enough
key.
to satisfy.
So do you find that the client's educational level and their experience in knowing, okay, I've got to get this many grams of protein, this many grams of fat, and this many grams of carbohydrates, do you find that, are you didactically teaching them to recognize that that's a protein, that's a carbohydrate, that's a fat, so that they have a better understanding?
Yep.
Because we talked about this before. You and I could go into a restaurant. Mm-hmm. We can go into a restaurant and we can say, I want to get that, and that. and stay pretty close to whatever nutritional plan we've crafted for ourselves based on our training. And some of that comes with education and experience. I also find that keeping things simple, I mean crazy simple. People say I'm a boring eater, but you know what? It's easy to stay lean when you're boring.
Oh, yeah.
But that's your goal. Because you kind of predictability is very important, I think, in that portion of your diet and portion control and everything else. So
absolutely. Yeah, when I'm teaching that, I typically will go through, common reference visuals for portion sizes. So, okay, a fist is like a 3-ounce portion of protein. So I'll usually tell the men have 2-3 times a day to start out. Same thing with carbs. I say about a fist full of carbs or a handful of carbs, and I give them a list of what that means. So like rice, cereal, etc. You're going to get 15 to 25 carbs, somewhere in that range. And, that's pretty much how I give that. So like with fat, I say like the size of your thumb if you're doing like butter or peanut butter.
Oils.
Things like that. So typically I have like a long list of those.
Sure.
Now, when you go to a restaurant, you can't see the fat.
Right.
So
Right.
I can train somebody's eye to estimate the carbohydrates and the proteins reasonably well. Fat gets tricky. So I say, if it's real shiny, you probably shouldn't eat the whole thing. And that's when I say, don't try to balance macros at a restaurant. You can't. That's what I meant by that. If you have a bunch of bell peppers and onions, like fajitas, a classic dish, you're getting a meat. You're probably getting 4 ounces because these restaurants are cheap. They're not going to give you 8 ounces of meat for $6 or $10.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're probably getting 4 to 6 ounces of the beef. So you can safely estimate that. The beef itself has fat in it. Then you see the little bubbles on top of it, right? So you know it was cooked in oil. Same thing with the vegetables. They're nice and soft and they glisten, So
Tastes really good.
Oh, yeah. And then you got the tortilla. So right there, you got a high carb, high fat meal, even though the individual foods themselves aren't necessarily high calorie. That's the funny part about it.
Right.
So what do you do there? Well, in that situation, I didn't do this yesterday, I ate the tortillas, but I'd say, well, just order it without the tortillas because it's not that the carbs are the problem. It's that you're getting so many calories from fat there that you just don't have room for the extra carbohydrate calories. So then it comes back to staples/routine versus special occasion, social event, etc. So sure, that's not a good way to eat 7 days a week. But we're not eating that way 7 days a week, or we're at least aspiring not to.
Right.
So if you're the type of person that can stay on a well-balanced, healthy diet, 5 days a week, and what that looks like is, moderate to low in fat, high in fiber, moderate to high in carbohydrate, depending on your activity level or what you're doing for training, and higher in protein, I'd say it's pretty balanced. If you're doing that during the week and then you just go out to eat, you're probably not going to balance your macro. That's not going to be a well-balanced diet that day because you're going out. You're going to be unbalanced by the very nature of the restaurant industry's options in America.
Yeah, that's the one I wanted to ask you is, do you think that when you kind of unbalance, is eating out just damage control for your diet?
In what sense?
In the sense that, you can't track the macros. Mm-hmm. If you are eating out, well, let me put it this way. I guess it depends on your frequency, right? How often you're eating out, right? So if eating out is a 3 to 4 times a week deal for you, right? Yep. Are you really just doing damage control when you're using these strategies that you've talked about? Since you can't really get any accuracy in terms of the macro content of your meals, or is it better to try to redesign your lifestyle where you eat out far less frequently, but when you do eat out, you just give yourself free reign?
That's ultimately the goal, yeah.
Okay.
So you generally want to eat well most of the time. But just remember, let's say, let me give you a sample day. Let's say in the morning you typically have this big vegetable omelet, couple pieces of toast, and berries. That's typically what I eat. And then if I'm a little bit hungrier, I get some oatmeal, right? Then, I might have a couple Greek yogurts for a snack, and then maybe at lunch I might make myself a big sandwich and have some more berries or banana or something. I eat a lot of fruit. Our friend over here that you're going to interview next will not eat a fruit unless it's out of that bottle of wine. But it's my life's goal to get him to eat a fruit. I couldn't resist. Anyways, so no, I'll eat that, or I'll have like maybe some potatoes or something like that. And then for dinner, I might make myself some ground beef, a big bowl of rice, and have a salad, or maybe saute some vegetables and spray butter, which I like to do.
Right.
Because I can still get some of that buttery type flavor without having to butter it down.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to start my day like that and eat all that food when I know I'm going to go out and have a 1,500 calorie meal.
That's what I was
okay.
going to
Yeah.
say. So
Yeah.
you on a day where you had a planned meeting or a planned event where you know you're going to eat out, you could draw back on some of your macronutrients that day or your diet that day. You
Yep.
could draw back a little bit to help balance that. But I tell you, like you're saying, you just kind of, if you're going to just say, well, I'm just going to go out and I'm eating good most of the time, I'm just going to go out and eat what I want to eat. And I think that's good every now and then, just for the sake of, of not.
You got to reset the brain.
Yeah, exactly. But we were at an Asian restaurant one time, a larger chain restaurant, nicer Asian restaurant. But my wife and I looked at the they had the caloric value of each meal.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It was it was P. Starts with a P and ends with a S.
I've had to navigate that place myself.
I mean, it was like 2,200 calories. Mm-hmm. It's for some people, it's their total daily intake in caloric value. So what are you going to eat? One meal that day? So you can't do you can't. Intermittent fasting, here we come.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but it's crazy. Some of these meals, and we wonder why we have the obesity epidemic that we have throughout this country. And it's just hard because the caloric density is so high, extremely high. And as we get older, and our metabolic rate continues to drop because lean mass goes down, right? So our metabolic engine is decreasing in its need for fuel and its metabolic rate. Then we've got a problem. And most of us that are in that 40 plus age range have the ability to eat out, fairly frequently if we want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you've got to start balancing that out some. I always tell people, you may think my meal habits are very boring, but it affords me the opportunity throughout the week in my total caloric intake in a 7-day time frame. Mm-hmm. It affords me the opportunity to go out on a meal and pretty much eat what I want to eat that week. In that one setting, and I'm still careful even with that, unless I'm going to nationals and I need to get as high as I can in the weight class, and because I got Moncrief
got to fill it out,
on my
Monfort.
Fill out the 100 kilo
whatever
class.
Moncrief, whatever his name is, he just crushes me anyway. So same difference.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice or strategies for clients that are struggling with, maybe it's their social group that they're in that just has a habit of eating out frequently? Do you have any advice for them to kind of start to change that habit, start preparing more food at home?
We'll get new friends. No, if it's bad enough, of course. But yeah, sure. Let me explore that for a second. So there's the old saying, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I think there's definitely some truth to that. But if you're hanging out with people that are going to knock you for trying to do that, that's something you might want to evaluate. I'm not a life coach here by any means, but I know
Robert
that
Santana, life coach.
Yeah, maybe new career.
It's got it's got a good ring to it.
I'd use you as a life coach.
Okay, sky's the limit.
Hey,
I want you as a hair coach. That could be a good side business.
Yours will look like mine if you just grow it.
We have a rule here.
Okay,
we don't talk about hair on this podcast. Hair is not.
Is that a sore subject?
No, hair's not even. Older people don't care about hair. So here's the deal, though. Talking about eating out, we're talking about creating some habits that are good habits, planning ahead of time, using portion control, also learning to maybe if we realize we're going to eat out that day and we know it's a business meeting or a social function and we're going to go off the chain during that meal, to plan ahead of time in regards to our total caloric intake earlier in the day.
Yeah.
And we've got to match that with training too if we're lifting too. If we're lifting or if we have some other type of sporting event that we're doing too, we got to make sure we get enough calories for that.
Yeah.
If that's earlier in the day. But let's face it, one of the challenges too about eating out is alcohol consumption too.
Yep.
And I know in my age group, when we go out with some couples that we hang with, we'll go out and we'll all have drinks together and just hang out and just sit and talk. And before you know it, it's been 4 hours and we've all had 3 or 4 drinks.
Yep.
We're careful with that too. There's this thing called Uber, but at the same time, there's a lot of empty calories there, and so lifestyle comes into play too.
Yep.
And I think I don't know. I find that the older that I get, the more I value my quality of life and the experiences that are available. and I'm not talking about a party atmosphere, a party, not that kind of deal, but more just that time with your friends, that relationship, and food and eating out is a big part of that setting, of that cultural setting.
Yep.
It's a huge part of that.
Yeah.
And so, balancing those things is very, very important. So other hints, we need other hints.
So you made me think about something, Trent. When you start trying to modify habits, for instance, and you have like a baseline of habits that you start at, people you're around are used to that. Then if you start drawing attention to what you're doing, you might start to get some comments. It's one of the things I hear from a lot of clients. They're like, oh, my friends, they give me a hard time because I won't eat, just live a little, this, that, and the other. And you want to kind of try and balance not drawing too much attention to it while still taking care of yourself, because you're going to deal with some of that no matter who you hang out with.
Right, right.
And what I've just kind of found is the easiest thing to do is if you're going to a place that has healthier options, you can order them. You can always order a salad before a meal. That's not weird. And I think getting dressing on the side is not weird either. That's becoming more socially acceptable, So you could start there. That kind of gets you full. And then when you order the actual entree, you try to go for something that's like, like grilled chicken. Sure, it's cooked in butter. Double the vegetables, instead of going with a starch, things like that. Like, so you're still kind of having a full plate, so it's not making it look quote unquote weird,
Right.
And then, drink water, order a glass of wine. You don't,
Sure.
Be realistic with it. You're going to go out with people that want to drink. You're probably going to drink, but drink slow, eat slow. That's what I do. So I've noticed that, I don't know if it may be partially because of what I do, but I am notorious for leaving food. And it's not because I'm thinking about it. It's because I eat painfully slow. I drink painfully slow too, which is why I don't tend to get blasted when I go out drinking. And then people are like, man, you drink so much, because it's like 6 hours later, I'm still drinking. I'm like, I'm on my third or fourth drink, and it's been,
Right.
6 or 7 hours, But that's something else I learned when I was a student, was just slowing down your pace. When you eat really fast, you tend to
Pace
eat more.
drinking.
Exactly. Pace drinking.
Yeah.
Pace, oh man, when I was a little college kid drinking like an idiot, I would...
that would have come in handy, wouldn't it? That would have come in handy.
Yeah, it would have helped a lot. Yeah, but you got to pace yourself when you're eating and drinking.
Yeah.
Some people like soda. I have clients that still drink regular soda, and it's the same kind of deal. I'm like, well, pour it in a glass, drink it slow. You like the can, okay, drink it slow out of the can. That way you don't drink 4 of them because you chug the first one, chug the second one.
Right, right.
Like, oh my God, I'm so full,
So I just kind of have a natural, I tend to like the flavor of whiskey more than I do wine, right?
Yeah.
I very rarely drink wine, but it does have the advantage of it's hard to, I can't, flat foot it very easily. Whereas wine, it's easy to just watch the glass just go down and then it gets filled up, and the hand fills it up.
If you order a bottle and the bottle comes to the table and it's
gone.
It's good, expensive wine. It's gone. And if you order another bottle, it's gone too.
It's gone too. Yeah.
You're not taking it home. So if it's two couples, then you've drank 8 glasses of wine in a pretty short time frame.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go out and have drinks afterwards or whatever. But I find when we first started living a life, my wife and I, when we first started improving our dietary habits, I went from 198 10 years ago, and I was not lean muscle mass, 198, to 168 in 6 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I lost 30 pounds. And I was shaving my head. I had started shaving my head at the time, and my wife said, "You've got to gain some weight. You look like a cancer patient. You look really bad. You have got to gain some weight."
168.
And I was like, okay. So I've got some pictures on Facebook, and not Instagram, but Facebook.
Paleo.
You got to. Oh yeah, I was crazy paleo, very paleo, because of the CrossFit culture and all that stuff, But all of our friends that were not into those lifestyle habits would call me a food Nazi, because we'd go out all together and it was really awkward.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to eat really healthy. I felt it was important, and I wanted to get my weight up, but I wanted to get it up with lean mass in the right way. And we would go out with couples and they'd say, "God, you're such a food Nazi," and it was a little socially awkward at first. And then I just basically, and I would talk about it some. because you're like, oh, this is so amazing.
Right.
You got to do this.
The honeymoon phase.
Just like we do with barbell training,
Sure.
It's something that we believe in. We've seen the results personally, but we're like the dog wagging the tail, and everybody else hasn't eaten the food that we have yet, and so, or experienced what we have. And so I found that I just shut up. Basically, plain and simple, we would go out with friends and I would just order what I know that I was going to order and just go from there. But I found eating out that if I would stick with single ingredient type menus, so like I said earlier, the salmon, the broccoli, and the salad, it was really simple. It wasn't fancy. It was one of the simpler things on the menu. And then I could ask them specifically, don't put any oil on the broccoli, leave it the way it is. Or I could say put oil on it, whatever I wanted to do. So that really helped to kind of simplify things for me over time and stay away from the foods that were real complicated menu items. I hate to say it that way.
Yeah, the fried avocado bell pepper stuffed with chicken and cheese, probably not the right option.
Probably
not. Exactly. Yeah. Fried pickles as an appetizer and all these other things, So I got a little bit more simplistic in my eating habits, but I just kind of shut up and just ate what I was going to eat.
Yeah.
And that helped. But it's weird, that dynamic, how people around you, they get a little awkward around you, and then they feel guilty, and then they don't want to socialize with you after a while because they're like, I don't want to go out with him or her because they're always choosing good things.
Right, yeah. They make me
like,
feel
I'm
bad
just
about
trying to improve myself.
Right,
here,
right.
Yeah, it's an important thing to consider because most people deal with it to some extent.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So I want to attack this from the flip side then, right? So we mentioned that one of the reasons why we tend to go out, especially if it's like during the week when we hit the Chick-fil-A or whatever, it's because the thought of going home and having to fix a meal after a long day is just overwhelming, right? And so I found one thing, and I can't really take any credit for this, this is all my wife, but we kind of have a base meal at our house that we can always make. So first thing we did is we bought this, it's called the Zoji Rushi. It's a rice maker. It's this Japanese rice maker. And anyway, the important thing is that you make rice, and depending on the type of rice that you make, it's good for 3 to 4 days. It keeps it warm, cooks it, keeps it warm, so it's always there ready to go. Occasionally you have to add water if it's a certain type of rice, right? But you take some meat, you brown it, you throw it on a bed of rice, and we take raw cabbage, just chop it up, and then throw something like... I'm drawing a blank. What's it? Soy sauce. Yeah, put like a soy sauce on it. Just some sort of like tangy sauce, or
spice it up a little bit,
or spice, right? Yeah. Like sriracha or whatever. And that's just like a base meal. It takes literally 5 minutes to do, no effort, and it's fairly nutritious, right? Because I've got the meat, I've got the rice, I've got the vegetable. Do you have any sort of base meals or anything like that you like to do that help you with food prep at home?
Yeah, actually. So I actually fell off for a while. But what I typically when I do this,
his falling off is like.
Yeah, I open a gym. I get somewhat of a pass, but that was recent. But before that, and for many, many years, so it's not something I just did for 3 months and stopped. I did this for over a decade. I would have a vegetable egg white omelet for breakfast and either sourdough toast or oatmeal to go along with it. And I always make my oatmeal slow cooked in ultra filtered milk. Before I would get 1% to get some sort of viscosity in the milk, and then I would cook it in that. And the reason I'd slow cook it, so I put it like at 5 minutes at medium power, and then it would kind of make it creamier texture. Remember, I'm a texture person. I made a video about this on YouTube on how to make oatmeal slow cooking it. It's not that entertaining, but you can check it out. Anyways,
we'll drop that in the show notes.
Yeah. So that's my breakfast every day since I was 19. And then for dinner, I would always make pounds and pounds of this 96% lean ground beef that I get at Trader Joe's.
Sure.
And I've gotten it at Walmart and Fry's or Kroger or whatever it is over here, Ralph's in California. I get it there. I'll get it at Safeway. I've had it everywhere, but I have found that the Trader Joe's one tastes significantly better. I don't know why, but it does. So I like to get that one when I'm not too lazy to drive, the extra half mile to go get it.
Right.
And I'll I'll brown that on a skillet, and then I'll store it in my fridge. I'll pick from it, microwave it, and then I'll saute some. I said this earlier. I'll put vegetables on a skillet, and then I'll spray it with the spray butter. I can't believe it's not butter. Mm-hmm. I'll just keep spraying it as it sautés and it gets a little bit soft, and then I throw it in, but I still leave a little bit of crunch because I like that. Mix it in with the beef, and then I'll either make myself some instant mashed potatoes or some instant rice, because it takes me 90 seconds to make that, and it tastes like the real thing. So those Idahoan instant mashed potatoes are delicious. I got hooked on those. I got my wisdom teeth pulled and 2 years ago, and my girlfriend's like, "You need to get instant mashed potatoes." You know.
Hey, she's smart.
Yeah,
she's a keeper.
Yeah.
You lock that down, dude. So, yeah, I kind of do the same thing. I eat the same thing for breakfast every single day. Mm-hmm. 3 eggs fried in spray olive oil, so I'll get some fats.
I forgot to mention that, yeah.
3 eggs, fried. And then I have a cup of unsweetened applesauce because I love it as a carbohydrate, and it's quick acting, boom. And then I have a cup of blackberries. I love blackberries. And I throw the blackberries in with the applesauce. So I've got carbohydrates, I've got my fats because of the sprayed olive oil, and I've got my proteins. I've got 18 grams of protein, and I've got fat from the eggs too, and some cholesterol there, the good cholesterols. And then I have a cup of coffee, and then I take 16 ounces of coffee with me on the way to work. It's the same thing every single day. It's great for my wife because my wife then knows all she has to do is get me eggs, applesauce, and blackberries, and I'm good. I have the same thing for lunch every single day, as long as I don't have a lunch meeting or something. And I find that overall, if I eat the same thing that I'm supposed to eat at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that I would be actually in a caloric deficit. And I do that on purpose. And the reason why I do that is I know I'm not going to eat the same thing at dinner. So at dinner, I could be out at a business meeting that's an 8 o'clock meeting. And so I'm meeting with, physicians or marketers or someone else or our staff at, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And I don't know what I'm going to get at dinner necessarily. But I can stay pretty close to my macros and not blow it out the door just by choosing the appropriate food groups and doing some of the things that you're talking about while eating out. I think a lot of it relies on the individual having a basic educational understanding of this is good, this is bad, this is the appropriate portion, and make sure you get one of each of the 3 food groups, And I find meals, like I said, that are really complicated, like a meal that's, like you said, on a bed of noodles with a bunch of different sauces.
Yeah.
If it's creamy sauce, guess what? It's got a ton of fat in it, a ton of fat. And so just keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah.
The KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. So where do we go from there? So the first thing is what in regards to eating out? What's the first hint? Plan ahead.
Plan ahead. Single ingredient foods.
Okay.
Water. Always include water. Drink water. And go for small portions of dessert.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I liked what you said about, like, in terms of actually eating the meal, whatever you've ordered, that you sometimes you'll just eat half, right?
Yeah.
Or you'll dip the fork in the sauce and then eat the salad instead of pouring it on. Or yeah, I like that.
And I have like
never ever say you're on a diet either.
Yeah. People
don't be
around
that
me
guy.
love that.
Yeah,
they love
or that girl. Yeah,
I have some go-to fast food restaurants at lunch. If I've got a heavy clinic load and I'm treating patients and I finish late, I know I've only got 30 minutes maybe or 20 minutes for lunch or whatever. Then there's a Chick-fil-A right around the corner. Well, Chick-fil-A in general is it's great food to eat. It tastes great, but it's not real healthy for you. So I'll get the grilled chicken wrap. And I don't get anything else besides a diet lemonade and the grilled chicken wrap. And that's all I'll have. And then I'll just go grab an apple. I like high fiber fruits because they're just lower in sugar and better for me. And they got good fiber intake. So I'll get a big apple and I'll eat that grilled chicken wrap and have that diet lemonade. And then I'll have a protein drink in the middle of the afternoon to make up for maybe the fact that I didn't get enough protein or I need a few more calories. So I've got a couple fast food restaurants in our town that I know I might hit. And so I've kind of pre-chosen ahead of time some meals that I know are going to kind of fit my macros and not throw me way off. If I'm not looking at maintaining weight, I don't care about gaining some pounds. And I find that strength training takes care of a lot of those woes because we have a faster metabolic rate.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
So I find that just having some muscle mass on board, my guy friends that are my age, that are in their 50s or late 40s, are like, man, how do you stay, muscular and lean looking? I'm like, dude, my metabolic rate's twice as fast as
Right.
yours because I got lean mass on board,
it's
dude.
been so much
You
easier.
have nothing but a dead bod. No, I don't tell them that, but I don't shun them like that. Well, maybe a couple of
You
them.
had it at one point.
Yeah, you know, I tell you what's funny is that a lot of my guy friends that are my age now are lifting. You know,
Good,
it's really
good.
cool.
Yeah,
It's cool.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and the ones that don't, I do shun. So no, I'm just joking.
Well, there you go. There's the average of the 5 people around you, right? There it is.
Yeah.
In practice.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. So, but
Man, I think we could talk about this all day, but those are some really good, I think, practical tips for people to take with you. So I learned the blackberry, or for me, it's the blueberries. I love blueberries.
Yeah.
I learned that
Raspberries.
trick
Yeah.
from Santana's Instagram account. He posts a lot of awesome hacks. I didn't realize that a cup? It's 10 grams of fiber per cup, roughly. For
The container
blueberries?
is 6 ounces and it has like 11 grams.
Okay,
yeah, I can eat a
so it's-
whole container
Right,
of
and it's,
blackberries.
yeah,
Oh
exactly.
yeah. If
So-
I have to be careful.
So it's the summer season. Blueberries are cheap and they're
Yep.
plentiful. So go out there and get you some blueberries, blackberries, whatever you like, and do that. And make sure you're following Robert on Instagram. You can get some of those awesome diet hacks. There's a lot more strategies and little tips that he offers there, which are really great.
And we'll put the hints in the show notes or anything else that we can think of.
That's right.
And do this again and just continue to add on to the
Yep.
eating out episodes, you know, and just other hacks and other opportunities to make sure that you're hitting your
Absolutely.
macros.
So remind us, where do we go follow you?
Instagram, _Robert_Santana. My website is weightsandplates.com. I am a Barbell Logic strength and nutrition coach and the head of nutrition. Yeah, a lot of things there. I'm also on startingstrengthonlinecoaching.com.
Excellent.
Very cool.
Excellent. Yeah.
Cool.
So as always, we'll post those links in the show notes along with everything else we talked about today. And Darren, you want to sign us off today?
Yeah, you can find us at 40 Fit Radio on Instagram. You can also...
All right. So it's been like 64 episodes.
Sorry, man, I can't remember the date. Dude, it's hard to function when you get a little bit older. No, so, all right, so if you want to find us, you can find us at 40 Fit Radio, our Instagram account. You can find us on 40 Fit Masters Community Group on Facebook, info@40fit.com for email. Find Trent at Marmalade Cream. I have no idea what that means, and I don't want to know. And me at Dr. Deaton on Instagram. Hey, thanks for joining us, guys, and thanks for joining the 40 Fit Nation.
See you next week.